Hello, my most beloved and murderous horde, and welcome back. I'm, of course, your mistress of murder, Lady Kempo, and you all know my son, Charlie. Say hello, Charlie. As promised, my most beloved horde, this is the paranormal video that you have been so hounding me for lately. I do apologize for the lack of uploads, though, as the original creepypasta, the SCP creepypasta that I've been working on, has become more involved than I anticipated, so I don't think there'll be any more uploads of content until that video is finished, so it might be a while. But, as I promised, I would get this video out this week, so without further ado, you know the drill by now, my lovelies. Pick your poison, sit back, relax, and let's have ourselves a little conversation. These are the top 10 creepiest and most unexplainable paranormal experiences to date. Some of these are articles, and some of these are taken from Reddit. So some of these will be in the first person. Number 1 is Voices in Woman's Head Diagnose Her Brain Tumor. In the year of 1984, a woman was sitting at home reading when she suddenly heard a very clear voice inside her head. The voice told her, "Please don't be afraid. I know it must be shocking for you to hear me speaking to you like this, but this is the easiest way I could think of. My friend and I used to work at the Children's Hospital, Great Ormond Street, and we would like to help you." After a series of medical tests, including psychological assessments, the patient was eventually diagnosed with a large benign brain tumor. The voice continued to speak to her throughout the medical testing. After the surgery to remove the tumor, the patient heard the voices one last time after regaining consciousness when she heard them say, "We are pleased to have helped you. Goodbye." She reported no post-surgical problems and never heard the voices again. The study of the patient diagnosing her own brain tumor with the help of mysterious voices in her head was actually published by the British Medical Journal. Number 2 is Imaginary Friend or Visiting Relative. This one came from Reddit. My grandfather passed away a few weeks after I was born. Never met the guy, never knew what he looked like. When I was 5 years old, I started to see this man in our rocking chair. I called him the rocking chair man. My parents thought it was just that imaginary friend stage, but it started to bug them when I told them every single day. They finally questioned me about it, and I told them every detail I could remember, and finally they showed me a picture of a man. This man was my grandfather. To this day, I'm now 22, every time I dream he's in the background somewhere. I remember when I dreamed about my high school graduation, and I looked in the stands and I saw him with my parents. I like to think that he's watching out for me, and being there when he's not really there. Number 3 is Past Life Experience. Several years ago, when my daughter was just over 3 years old, my husband and I were watching a TV show about 9/11. It was on or around the anniversary of the event. My daughter, who was coloring nearby, looked up when the screen showed a plane hitting one of the World Trade Center buildings. She said to us, "I died there." Then she just went back to coloring like she hadn't said a word. We had never talked to her about the concept of death and had never discussed 9/11 with her. Since then, she has not said anything else about it, but now if something comes on TV about 9/11, she says, "I don't want to watch this." This is from Vicky Pocock via BeyondReligion.com. Number 4 is Skeletor, the Hampton Court Palace CCTV ghost. The Hampton Court Palace in Surrey is thought to be one of the most haunted buildings in England. According to their website, the castle is officially haunted by at least 3 specters. Catherine Howard, the Screaming Lady in the Haunted Gallery, has been spotted multiple times over the years by palace workers and guests alike. Sybil Penn, the Grey Lady of Hampton Court Palace, who has been spotted roaming the palace since her tomb was moved back in 1829. However, the palace's most notable haunting, however, has to be Skeletor, the creepy apparition that was caught on the palace's CCTV in 2003. Palace officials explain on their website, on 3 consecutive days, palace security staff were called to close one particular fire door near the palace's introductory exhibition. On the first day, CCTV footage showed the doors flying wide open with great force, but there was nothing to reveal why. On the second day, the same thing happened, but this time, a ghostly-looking figure in period dress suddenly appeared on the screen and closed the doors. They add that the doors opened again on the third day, but there was no further sign of the ghostly doorkeeper. It is unclear as to who this particular specter is, though there are some theories. Number 5 is Dad's Doppelganger. About 10 years ago, I was 8, I was visiting my dad at his house. My stepmother was in the kitchen, and I was in the family room. We both saw my father, wearing a red flannel shirt and blue jeans, walk around the corner from the living room and start walking up the stairs. I followed him and called his name as he went up the stairs. He turned back and looked at me, got to the top of the stairs, went around the corner. I called his name again. Then from the living room my dad popped his head up over the couch and asked what I wanted. He had been asleep on the couch the entire time, yet both my stepmother and I clearly saw him wearing the clothes he had the whole day, and all go from the living room up the stairs. It was the strangest thing I had ever seen. Both my stepmother and I still remember it and talk about it to this day. Also, it was in broad daylight, so it wasn't some uncanny illusion of the light. This is from Gunslinger Bill on Reddit. Now, I would disagree that this was a doppelganger. I would more suggest that this might fit the glitch in the Matrix. Number 6 is a child's creepy premonition. When my oldest sister was little, like 3, she asked my then pregnant aunt to pick her up and hold her. My mother said that she was like, "She can't pick you up, honey. She has a baby in her." And then my little sister said, "That baby is dead." My mom freaked out, but my aunt and grandma were fine, and were telling my mom it was all good, that she was just a toddler and didn't know what she was saying. Well, lo and behold, my aunt goes to the doctor the next day for a routine pregnancy checkup, and the baby was, in fact, deceased. Gives me the willies just thinking about it. This is coming from Stanley the Manly 44 via Reddit. Number 7 is Shadow Person. I was living in a house in Laguna Beach that had been there since the 1920s. In its history, it had been a speakeasy, a brothel, and a house for smuggling illegal immigrants. One day, my new wife and I were having an argument. I can't even recall what it was about. She walked down the block to get a cup of coffee and cool off, and I was alone in the house. From my bedroom, I could look across the hall to the bathroom, then through the bathroom down to the other hall. I was standing at my dresser, and I just noticed movement out of the corner of my eye, and I looked down there. There was, and honest to God, this gives me goosebumps just typing it, 17 years later, a black figure. It was only maybe 3 feet tall, and it was only vaguely humanoid. It looked like black scribbles, like someone had scribbled a human shape, but the scribbles moved like electricity arching. That's the best way to describe it. There was no sound that I could remember, and I distinctly remembered when I saw it, I wasn't afraid, just, what the fuck? Then it noticed me looking at it. I can't say it turned around, it just focused on me, I guess. Then I was scared. I didn't move, didn't scream, nothing. I was just frozen, because it just fucking came at me. It rushed down the hall towards me. I have no idea what it intended, but as soon as it entered the bathroom, the door closest to me slammed shut on it. I then screamed, I yelled for my wife, who wasn't home, and I went outside into the daylight. I didn't go back in until she got home about 10 minutes later. This is coming from Makes Kids Kill via Reddit. Number 8 is The Mysterious Whistler. A young man in Lansing, Michigan, hears a strange two-tone whistle that seems to come out of nowhere. Oddly enough, this incident was repeated at random intervals throughout his life, and always left him feeling with the intense dread. The last time he heard the sound, he managed to take a video of the whistler, though he is still no closer to figuring out who or what seems to be watching and following him wherever he goes. He saw a figure steering a canoe about 20 meters offshore. Sarah decided to go get more beers from the car, leaving me alone to stare at this mystery person. And then, of course, they whistled at me. My entire body was frozen and covered in goosebumps. It was the exact same whistler from my childhood, more than a decade earlier. I looked at the figure, but it was much too dark to discern who it could be. They were wearing a hat. When they were perpendicular to the shore from me, they stopped paddling and turned the canoe to face me directly and whistled right at me. I was so frightened I stood up and shouted at them, "Who are you?" They didn't say anything, just whistled a couple more times, turned the canoe 180 degrees, and paddled out of sight. Number 9 is Wilson Hall at Ohio University, West Green. Room 428 at Wilson Hall is permanently closed. Students at Ohio University, the 9th oldest public school in the U.S., are not allowed to so much as enter the dorm room due to the numerous reports of haunting and dangerous ghostly activity in the room. Wilson Hall was reportedly built on an Indian burial ground, because that always ends well. Spiritualists claim that the building is located at the center of a pentagram formed by 5 such ancient cemeteries, lending this geographical position extra powers for either safety or evil. I would like to say that a pentagram is not evil. Now, in the 1970s, a male student died under mysterious circumstances in room 428. Years later, a female student used what she perceived as the room's energy to practice rituals such as astral projection, because that always ends well as well, during which the human spirit is said to leave the body and travel about at will. Not long after moving in, this student died as well, reportedly from cutting her own wrists. Ever since these 2 students' death, anyone who has lived in the room reported terrible, scary occurrences at all hours of the day and night. Objects flew across the room and smashed against the walls. Students heard whispering and even shouting, even though no one was there. Doors would often open and then slam shut of its own accord. Stranger still, demonic faces kept appearing in the wood grain of the room's door. Although the school replaced the door many times, the tortured ghoulish faces reappeared every time. Eventually the room became too frightening and the university feared another student death could result, so they decided to seal the door shut forever. This is the only known case where a dormitory room has been sealed off in the U.S. to date. Number 10. Glitch in the Matrix. When I was around 20 a few years ago, I kept having dreams about a woman with long black hair named Aurora. They were different dreams, but for some reason her distinct face and name always ended up in them. It got to the point where I would wake up frustrated and confused, trying to Google her name to find out how I was connected to her. After a few months, she stopped showing up and I dismissed it, thinking my brain was just being a scumbag. Fast forward a few years later, Halloween 2009, I'm in a car with a friend stopped at a gas station. I'm about to pull out and merge into the highway when I get a phone call from a random number, so I stopped the car, but no one answered. There was a person behind me who grew impatient and honked at me, then swerved in front of me instead of waiting for 2 seconds for me to move. Second they got on the highway, a silver Civic lost control of their wheel and crashes into the car that swerved in front of me. I called the cops and waited at the gas station for them to come. Turns out that the drivers of both cars died. It would 100% 100% would have been me if I hadn't got that phone call. Called it back a few hours later out of gratitude and curiosity. Rang 3 times and it went to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Aurora. Please leave your name and number. Never had goosebumps like that in my life. I called it again the next day because I was confused about the whole situation. The woman answers and we got to talking. I tell her my story, including the dreams I had. She tells me she doesn't know how I got her number and that she never called me as far as she remembers. Weird. I asked her if she has a Facebook to confirm that she is in fact the woman of my dreams. Check the Facebook. Holy fuck, it's her. This was from Sarah X11 on Reddit. And now, my lovelies, as I promised, I will be sharing with you one of my unexplainable moments. Now, this happened many, many years ago, so the details might be a little fuzzy. I had just started practicing paganism, and in my hometown, the quote-unquote coven or grove, as we sometimes call it, is very small, but it's also very spread out. On this morning, I had woken up to pain in my chest and in my left arm. This had never happened before, but what made it especially interesting was what dream I'd had prior to waking up. I was walking up towards a house that I did not personally recognize, and I walked up to the door and knocked on it. The woman who answered did not have a face that I could see. I asked her, "Is she here?" The woman shook her head, but let me in. I then proceeded to walk with this woman down into a basement where there was an altar and an F-shaped river. The two horizontal lines of water were still water. The vertical one was moving water. This is important for a reason. On this altar, there was a Viking-style boat with an orange candle in it. I turned to the woman and asked her if she had the urn. She nodded and placed the urn on the altar. I then lit the candle and set the boat in the water. Mind you, this is in one of the horizontal still water areas. However, despite it being still water, the boat moved forward into the vertical stream, turned completely, and then it proceeded to go straight through the wall. Now, how I knew that it would be different if it had gone off into the other still body of water, I don't know. I just knew that it held a different meaning. Upon waking up and the pain, I realized it was around 8 o'clock-ish, and I decided that I was going to see one of the dream interpreters of the coven, whose name was Cherry. Now, Cherry was a very well-known and well-liked member of the coven, and she was known for her abilities to read and help us process our dreams, especially those who, like me, had very vivid and very detailed dreams. I then went off to the store and was met with about 5 others from the coven. Each of them were there for the same reason, to see Cherry. They had all had a very similar dream, similar in the fact that it shared a common factor, that being the color orange, whether it was a candle or a cat or an orange fox. It was one of these 3. Now, as time went on, since the store didn't open until generally 9:30, 10 o'clock, more and more of us started to gather. It got to the point where almost the entire coven was at the front of this store waiting for it to open, all of us to see Cherry. The high priestess of this coven then came in to unlock the doors and open the shop, and she was visibly upset. We had all asked her what she was upset about, as she had also asked us why we were all here so early, and we all said that we were here to see Cherry. She then informed us that the night prior, Cherry had had a heart attack and was currently in the hospital and had not regained consciousness. A few hours later, after all of us waiting to hear as to, how Cherry was doing, our High Priestess partner then came back and told us that Cherry had passed away. And that she had passed away shortly after the last of us had arrived at the store, which was at roughly about 9 o'clock, 9:30ish. We all then realized, or we've all come to accept the fact that we were all called there for a reason. We all had pains in either our chest or our arms or both, but the one thing that needs to be said is what represented Cherry in the coven. Now, in most pagan rituals, there are 5 elements. There is earth, wind, water, fire, and spirit. Fire, in particular, is represented by one of 3 colors, either red, yellow, or orange. Cherry's element was fire. Her spirit animal was well known in the coven to be an orange fox. She also was very much so associated with the goddess Bast from the Egyptian pantheon. Now, Bast is known as the cat goddess, as she holds the more humanoid form of a feline. These 3 elements combined all occurred in some way, shape, or form in our dream. We have come to accept the fact that this was Cherry saying her goodbyes. What makes the story even sadder was that Cherry and her partner were actually planning on getting married a few months after she had passed. And that, my lovelies, is one of my unexplainable experiences. I hope you all have enjoyed this tale of mine and for the other paranormal experiences in this video. That is all the time I have for you today. Until next time, my lovelies, remember, haunting dreams and blessed be.